This is Creepy and Geeky. Welcome. I'm your host, Robert, and today's guest is Ygraine Hackett-Cantabrana. Ygraine is the host of the What a Scream podcast and a senior contributor to Moving Pictures Film Club and a contributor to Ghouls Magazine. Welcome to the show, Ygraine.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, we've kind of talked about it a few times, bouncing back and forth, but I'm glad I finally got you on for a podcast episode, and today we're going to be talking some fun Kevin Smith movies that you just can't find anywhere anymore. We're going to be talking Dogma and Red State.
Yes.
Yeah, both very religious themed, and both so out of print that they are literally almost impossible to find affordably, at least. I know that I paid $80 for my copy of Dogma, which I just recently found out on my watch of it. The audio wasn't the greatest.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was not for the most part, it's okay. But when there's some music in certain parts, it kind of garbles it a little bit. And I was like, oh no. So, oh well. So, but anyway, what is your history with Kevin Smith movies in general?
So it's pretty funny because like Kevin Smith has always obviously been on my radar. You know, I've seen Clerks and Clerks 2, and he's never really crossed my mind. But when I think about when someone comes to me with these films, I'm like, actually, like I really like him as a filmmaker, as a comedic one, as well as like kind of a thriller, horrific one as well. I think he's really smart and he's really funny at the same time, but not kind of up his own ass funny. He's just a funny bloke. Like, he's also really good at playing on people's fears as well. As you'll see in like Red State. But yeah, I really like him. He seems like a really nice bloke as well, like someone you want to go for a beer with. So yeah, he seems quite cool.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've been a big fan of his pretty much since the beginning. I think, my memory is always kind of hazy, but I think my first exposure to him was with Clerks, definitely with Mallrats for sure. But I believe Clerks I saw at least around the same time period, and I fell in love with his stuff. Same with the Quentin Tarantino stuff. They both came up right around the same time, and they both affected me differently, for different reasons. And I would say for sure that Kevin Smith is very good with the comedy and just kind of like he doesn't get a lot of credit for this. At least I haven't seen very many people do it, but he's very good at touching on human issues like that we all deal with, love and friendship and, what all those mean to everybody. And I think that's what ultimately like fans of his can connect with, that they get dismissed a lot because of all the, what he calls dick and fart jokes. So, I just think that he balances that very well. If you really look at his movies and really enjoy them, you'll see that he balances the heart along with the humor, and in such a good way. And then deviating with both of these movies, Dogma definitely falls more into the very humorous side. I mean, we got Jay and Silent Bob, and all this comedic viewing of religion, taking a very heavy subject and skewering it with that humor, whereas with Red State it's very much just a straight ahead thriller horror movie. And it's two sides of the same coin in terms of religion and how it affects us on a day basis. So but let's jump straight into Dogma and
let's do it.
Yeah. So what do you think of the movie overall?
I love Dogma. Like anyone that knows me, I'm from Ireland, really Catholic country.
Yeah.
A lot of indoctrination here. It's still, the church and state is not separated here still.
Oh, yeah.
And so I love any film that kind of takes the piss out of religion, especially Catholicism.
Oh
Like
yeah.
that is it the opening scene where George Carlin unveils Buddy Jesus, and it is the funniest shit I have ever seen because here in Catholic Ireland, they're always trying to like appeal to the youth, right? They even had this rapper priest come out and he
Oh
did this
no.
song called like, it was like, Who's in the House? Jesus in the House. And he was trying to appeal to like the hip hop. It was so funny.
No.
And it was a real priest and everything. And so this opening scene where you've got this Catholic priest trying to appeal, what was it called? Like Catholic Wow or something.
Catholicism. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And like from the get-go, I was like, this is my kind of film. Like I fucking love this film. And it looks at this kind of Christian mythology. And I mean, it it carries on this Christian mythology into the storyline, but at lots of times it really takes the piss out of it and it really
Hmm.
exposes its kind of how hypocritical it is. Um, but also kind of not being patronizing at the same time, which
Yeah.
I think is uh, something that Kevin Smith does really, really well. It's just so smart how he takes the piss out of Christianity, but does
Absolutely.
it in a really endearing way.
No, he does a really good job of balancing that, skewering it really hard and really pointing out the hypocrisies of it, but also
Mm,
celebrating it as well. That,
yeah,
like, just, because at the end, I mean, he doesn't come down on either side of that. You
yeah,
can go away from that movie and making up your own mind about what your own feelings are on that, because
yeah,
he leaves you with both hands in that. Like, do it's okay to not believe and it's okay to believe.
yeah,
And and he's not being preachy about it at all. And I
yeah,
that's what I enjoy most about the film, is that, as somebody like myself, I've been very non-religious for, like all of my adult life. And I don't care for religion. I'm not atheist, but I don't care for religion.
yeah,
And so watching something like this is fun, especially the part with George Carlin, because I've always been a
yeah,
huge George Carlin fan, and knowing that he's an atheist playing this cardinal was
yeah,
just great. It was like perfectly on point for him. And it
yeah.
is just fantastic.
Yeah, I think with Kevin Smith, what he says in this film, and like I could be completely wrong, but he's like, you know what? It's okay to believe, it's okay to have faith. What's not okay is organized religion and how
Yes,
it
absolutely.
impacts on reproduction issues, or how this Catholic priest who thinks he's the be all and end all, goes around blessing his own golf clubs. It's like
Yeah.
this really kind of like he's like, it's all right to believe, but like don't get indoctrinated into this bullshit.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. No, and I think the funny thing is the movie is even more timely now than it was
mm,
then. I mean, it was timely then. It's one of those movies that, because of religion and because of the state of reproductive health in the world, not only but just even in the US now, is just, it's crazy. And so this movie just speaks to the current situations in a lot of ways that, I wish that this movie was widely available.
yeah,
uh it sucks that unfortunately the rights are still tied up with stupid the Weinsteins
yeah,
and everything. And if we could eventually get that untangled, because I know the Weinsteins owned it, but they distributed it through Lionsgate. And that's what I'm hoping
okay,
on, is that, because I'm pretty sure everything that the Weinsteins own is now owned by another company. So I don't know why this stuff, including Dogma and Red State, aren't both available through somewhere else at this point. So,
yeah,
especially through streaming. So,
yeah. I mean, let's hope it. I mean, it went past its 20-year anniversary and didn't there
yeah,
wasn't a peep about it. So let's hope maybe a 25-year anniversary we might get a bit
fingers
of a
crossed. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's just it's just so fucking funny. It shows like, I mean, I'm really into like Christian mythology, and there's a really funny bit where I think it's Chris Rock's character, Rufus, who's like, stop calling it Christian mythology.
Yeah,
But it is, for me, it's Christian mythology
right,
where they're, they're talking about how everyone sees the Christian lore as white, predominantly white. And
right.
Rufus, Chris Rock's character, was like, I was the 13th apostle and I wasn't shown because I was black. And he's like, you know what? Jesus was black. Um, and there's all these funny bits where it's like it's pointing out, as we said, the hypocrisy of Christianity. Like, of course, Jesus was black. He's from the Middle East. Like,
Yeah,
he's not a white guy. Like, he's definitely
no,
not. And the fact that we've got Loki, who is an avenging angel, an angel of death, and that's what angels were in the beginning. They were terrible
mhm,
creatures who were like really into their massacres. Um, and then we've got God portrayed as a woman, really well done
yes,
by Alanis Morissette. And it's
oh
just
yeah,
hilarious how everyone thinks like God is this man that everyone should fear. And it turns out to be this woman who loves doing headstands against a tree. Like,
yeah.
it's just, I just think it's such a smart movie. I love it.
Yeah, no, it's being a fan of Kevin Smith from the beginning, and uh getting to see his movies as they came along. That was it. Like, it was so funny to see the brouhaha over it that
Mm,
was coming about, and just when it finally came out, it was such a it's not a movie that is offensive at all.
yeah,
Like, not really. I mean,
yeah.
sure, there's a shit monster in it, and that's kind of offensive, but I was like, oh, that's just gross. No, I don't want to see that. But but other than that, it's a great movie. And he's got such a great cast in it. I mean,
Mm,
it's ostensibly the first Jay and Silent Bob fronted movie.
mhm.
But it's we've got Chris Rock, we've got Alan Rickman, Alanis Morissette, Salma Hayek, uh, Ben Affleck, and Matt Damon. You
Mm.
know, everybody is so good in that movie. Linda Fiorentino, I whatever.
Yeah, you kind of take her or
I
leave her. You're like,
yeah,
anyone could play her.
exactly.
Like,
I read something today that said Kevin Smith had a really hard time with her, and I'd always heard that before too. But today was the first time I had read this little bit that he
mm,
wished he had actually cast Janine Garofalo, who is in the movie in a very small role,
yeah,
but if he had cast her instead in the main role, and I was like, oh, that would have been
yeah,
fantastic. That would have been such a better movie, and the movie's already great on its own, but that would have elevated
yeah,
it up even higher to have a different actress, because I think Linda Fiorentino just doesn't fully connect with us or the audience or anything else, and
yeah,
it's unfortunate that small
mm,
part of it, but the rest of the movie is so good.
yeah,
It's so many great actors, so many great performances in it. It's
yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah, I actually think it's Matt Damon and Ben Affleck's best role. Like, I'm not a fan of these two. Like, I just think they're the real generic, like, white male actors that you see a lot. And I just
Yeah,
think they're fantastic as these two angels desperate to get back into heaven. Especially Matt Damon. Like, Matt Damon gets so much shit because he's, Matt Damon. Um,
yeah,
he's fantastic as Loki. Like, he's so psychopathic,
yeah,
but then he has this amazing character development at the end where he realizes that it was Ben Affleck after all this time pushing him and
yeah.
like using him basically. And he just has this amazing character development where he flips and he realizes it's like he gets drunk, and it's just I really love these two as I couldn't imagine anyone else as these angels, but it's just so hard to
No,
believe that it's Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. Um, but yeah, I think it's their greatest role ever.
no, and I think that's what's funny too, is I think Matt Damon does a better job when it looks like he's having fun, more comedic
Yeah,
style roles and stuff, like the little bits that he's played in the MCU, in the Marvel movies
yeah,
and stuff. He plays an actor playing Loki in the last
yeah,
two Thor movies, and those are hilarious bits.
yeah,
So it's great to see him continue the Loki. Uh,
yeah.
but Ben Affleck, I like Ben Affleck more in the early days, especially with his Kevin
Mm,
Smith stuff. Once he got to be bigger, I just don't think he fits a star mold as well
yeah,
as more of a. I think he's better as a character actor,
yeah,
and so I think that or at least a smaller actor. seeing him in the big budget stuff just never works for me. Like
Yeah.
watching him as Batman, I'm just like, it so disconnects from me. I'm like, he is not a good Batman. So
I feel so bad for him. Like, I want him to succeed. Like, he's one of those actors that you want to, but you're just like, oh, Petal, like, it's just not working for you. Like, bless your little cotton socks. It's just not working.
Yeah, no, I think he's better at doing the character work, the small roles, the indie stuff. I think he's an indie actor who, you know, because he's got those looks that it helped elevate him, it pushed him a little bit more forward. And it's like, nah, dude, you need to pull back and you know, do the indie work more, because I think he's more, I think in a way he's much more successful with that rather than the generic hero acting.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I agree.
But you know, but yeah, no, I agree, it's some of their best work in this one. They do a great job for sure. But it's great, the other little small roles. I mean, Alan Rickman's got a really tiny role in this, but it's so good. I've loved Alan Rickman forever too. So of course, getting his start with, you know, in American movies with Die Hard. So
I just love how, like, you know, he plays Metatron, who is the voice of God, and he's such a sarcastic little bitch. And I just love that that's the voice of God, like Alan Rickman.
And I just feel like that's just that's just how Alan Rickman is in real life. Like that's just how
himself,
he's just playing himself. So that's how I've always just seen him outside of work. So, you know, it's just a sarcastic jackass, but a good-natured one, you know. But you know, it's just it tackles that religion stuff, but in such a great stupid way, especially because Jay and Silent Bob are the main characters. They're the leads. I mean, Linda Fiorentino's character is supposed to be the lead, but I really think it's the Jay and Silent Bob show. And it just, I don't know, it's
I think
it's just a lot. It's just a lot of fun.
I think I mean, you could watch their characters and you could be really offended by them. But I think especially with like Jay, like he's such a shithead, like, but the
constantly trying to have sex with her.
Right. And, you know, you could obviously look back and be like, oh, it's really problematic. And sure, there are problematic parts of it. But you've got to remember, this was the 90s or, you know, the early 2000s. I think what Kevin Smith does with those characters, especially with Jay, he makes a commentary on it. He's like, look, yes, he is a shithead because he is a product of his time. And because he's obviously trying to make up for something which is kind of revealed, you know, I think, is it Rufus or Metatron reveals that when he masturbates, it's over men.
He's thinking of guys,
And so there is that thing of, obviously around this time, being gay was quite, you had to still be closeted, so a lot of people overcompensated. And I really think Kevin Smith was making a commentary about it, how, yes, he is super problematic and he's a dickhead, but at the core of it, he's a good guy, because, you know, there is a point where he's like, look, women's bodies, they're their own. And, you know, fuck anyone who tries to change that, or, you know, fuck these religious assholes. And, you know, by the end of it, they are willing to put their lives at risk for this woman. And essentially they're good guys. Like, yes, they're complete assholes, but as I said, product of their time.
Well, I think it's go ahead.
I was just going to say, they're really fucking funny as well. And like Kevin Smith, like Silent Bob doesn't say a fucking thing, but just Kevin Smith and the way he plays Silent Bob with just his facial expressions. So fucking funny and so fucking talented.
He downplays his acting ability, but being able to act without barely talking and just through physical and facial expressions is fantastic. Like, he is so good at that. And he dismisses it way too much. And I do think that it's funny too, because what you said about how Rufus reveals that you know, when Jay masturbates, that he's thinking of guys, and, you know, Silent Bob like looks at him all shocked, but Jay goes, dude, not all the time. So it's not even like he's not even trying to deny it. He downplays it, but he's not denying it, which I thought was an interesting way of saying it too, because it wasn't a denouncement of homosexuality at all. It
Exactly.
was
Yeah.
a, hey, sometimes I do. He was admitting
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
was an interesting little bit that it was a kind of a blinking you miss it bit, and you could take it
Yeah.
one way or the other. But I do think that it was very like nice way of saying that.
Yeah.
So
And I think like even when Bob kind of looks at him shocked, it's not like disgust shocked.
no,
It's more like, why haven't you told me? Like, why,
yeah,
you don't need to hide that from me, kind of. Yeah, it's not, I mean, definitely for a 99 film, you think it would be a lot more problematic. I mean,
exactly.
me and my partner went back and watched a bunch of like, Dude, Where's My Car and all this kind of stuff. And we were watching it and we were like, oh,
Oh
this is
yeah,
terrible. But like looking back on this film, there like I really wasn't shocked.
no,
It was just kind of like, actually, the film still holds up.
yeah, no, it really does. And I think that's I think his only movie that doesn't really hold up that well is probably Chasing Amy.
Mm,
Um, and he admits that himself,
yeah,
and he admitted afterward that that was just not the right way to go about that movie.
yeah,
And it's that doesn't take away from it. You can see even in that movie that he's trying to say something good about it.
mm,
So and I think that's ultimately where um Kevin Smith comes from, is he fully comes from the heart,
yeah,
and he's really trying to imbue all of his movies with that, especially the View Askewniverse movies, that that despite all the shenanigans and all the weird shit that happens, that it everything comes from the heart, and everybody is coming from a good place.
yeah,
And so at least the positive people in there, there
yeah,
obviously some negative people in there, but
yeah,
you know it's but yeah. And even with this movie, I mean, most of the people in this are trying to, even Bartleby and Loki aren't necessarily evil per se.
yeah,
They just their motivation is to get back that love of God that they
yeah,
miss, because
mm,
they made a bad mistake, and
yeah,
they just want to be forgiven. And to do that, and they're willing to do everything, including destroy the universe, to
yeah,
get back there. And which is obviously dumb,
yeah,
but yeah. It's but at the end of the day, most of the people who are trying to get this all done are coming from a good place. Even
yeah,
Azrael and everybody else are trying to get back to something resembling what they had before.
yeah,
And it's mostly, the movie's more about, like you said, it's more about faith and not
mm,
religion, and just finding faith in something,
yeah,
regardless of what that is.
mm,
And I think that's what it should come down to, from everyday people anyway, is at
yeah,
the end of the day, you know e- atheist, religious, or whatever, have faith in something that keeps you going.
yeah,
And and that's what I love about this movie, is that that's what it's saying. And yeah, uh
mm,
and you truly feel that when you watch it.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a bit where, again, I can't remember whether it was Rufus or Metatron said that, the worst thing that happened to humanity was when everyone split up to, like Buddhist,
Yeah,
Christian, Jewish. And what he was basically saying there was like, we're all people who have faith, um, and we shouldn't be separated because of this, because of religion, basically, that it's all the one belief, whether you are polytheistic,
right,
monotheistic, we all believing something, we're all human, um,
right,
and there should never be war or any sort of bad vibes because of it.
right. And I mean, we see that today's society as well. I mean, there's so many things being said and
Mm-hmm.
done in the name of whatever god somebody believes in. And
Exactly. Yeah.
and rather than finding the commonalities between all of us, everybody's finding the divisions and
Mm-hmm.
using those to make things worse rather than make it better. And
Exactly.
I don't want to get too
Yeah.
preachy on the podcast, but I mean, that's ultimately where this all comes from. And that's what I love about it, is that he does make mention of that. And then Rufus says that thing about uh it shouldn't be about belief, it should be about an idea. Everybody has good ideas,
Yeah.
and it's that's what it should be about. It should be about a good idea, not a belief. And
Yeah.
so when it comes right down to it, so
Yeah. Yes.
let's see. um I do think it's funny that even in 1999, when this movie came out, that it was getting massive protests, especially for a movie that had not been seen yet. I mean, it's
Of
one thing
course
to
it
watch.
was.
Yeah, of course, it's one thing to protest a movie once it's out and you've been able to see it and you know what it's fully
Yeah.
about and everything. But to protest a movie that hasn't even come out yet is just ridiculous, because you don't know anything about it. So,
Yeah. I mean, of course it was. Like,
yeah.
I mean, even when oh god, the Da Vinci Code came out and there was massive protests here in Ireland. I'm sure there was in America as well. You're just like, lads, come on, I'm sure you've got other things to worry about. Like,
right? Like, seriously, like, go do something else.
Right? If you're that secure in your religion and your faith,
Thank you.
like, why give a shit? Like,
Absolutely.
like you deal with your own shit before you start protesting a bleeding film with Alanis Morissette starring as God. Like, come on.
Oh man. Yeah, no, that's ridiculous. Yeah, I think it's funny too, because there were protests against it, that Kevin Smith actually went out to one of the protests and nobody recognized him. So he went into the crowd and was protesting his own movie too. And so then a reporter came up and said, they're like, "Aren't you Kevin Smith?" He's like, "No, I get that all the time though." Yeah. He's like, "Yeah, no, I'm protesting this movie." And like it's so funny because they've actually got it recorded and they actually like made it on the news and stuff.
Oh my god, I'm gonna have to go. I'm sure that's on YouTube. I'm gonna have to go seek it out.
I think it's probably on YouTube. There's on YouTube is the making of. It's called In Defense of Dogma. Look that up, and it's actually a long documentary, and so it's probably in there as well. So
okay, amazing.
Yeah, and so this movie was interesting too, because up until this point, his first 3 movies, because this was his 4th. Yeah, his first 3 movies, Clerks, Mallrats, and Chasing Amy. Well, Clerks and Chasing Amy were both done through Miramax. Mallrats was done through Universal, but the original 2 were done through Miramax. But because Dogma was potentially controversial, Disney, who owned Miramax at the time, did not want to distribute it. And so that's why the Weinsteins ended up buying it themselves and then pushing it through Lionsgate. Yeah, no, I'm of the same opinion about the Weinsteins. But so that's why I think that's why it's a little bit harder, like I said, to get it out on video. But yeah, because Disney was a little gun shy about that. And I mean, when it comes down to it, it's really not that. It's really not that big of a deal. I think they said too that Lionsgate, it was their most profitable movie until 2004. I'm not sure what unseated it, but it was their most profitable movie for like 5 years. Wow. And so it's like, well, it turned out really well for Lionsgate. So Disney kind of messed up there, which is surprising sometimes.
I was just looking up because I was like, I bet it was banned in Ireland, and it actually wasn't banned in Ireland, because so From Dusk Till Dawn was banned here.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so was the sequel, which is hilarious. And funnily enough, so was WrestleMania 2001 was banned here as well. So it's really surprising how Dogma wasn't banned here. Because I fully expected it to be. But yeah,
you would think, because it's so much more, specifically about Catholicism. That would have been. Yeah, that's so weird. Yeah, I find the weird, like the banning of stuff in Britain and Ireland and all that always fascinating too, because of the 80s, the video nasties and everything is such a weird thing, because we didn't have that here in America. They just they put out everything. They were just like, all right, we're just going to shove it on video and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean the Exorcist was basically banned until 1997.
So
Um,
weird.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre was banned until 1999. So
Wow.
yeah,
And not that that stopped any of you from being able to see it, because you guys all just traded like bootlegs for,
I know,
all that
right?
time. So it's like,
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
yeah.
It's like
And
now,
then
go ahead.
I Spit on Your Grave was banned 4 times. So it was originally banned in 1994, and then 2000, and then 2002, and then 2010 again.
Wow.
I know.
Okay then.
So I'm really surprised that Dogma isn't amongst that, because I would have thought that
Yeah.
would have been like high on the list there. Um, but yeah, I guess Kevin Smith dodged that one. So
Yeah. Oh, that's too funny. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, it's a great movie. I enjoy
it
it.
is.
I hadn't seen it in so long, so it was great revisiting it.
Yeah.
Um,
It's such a fun watch as well. Like, yes, it has really deep meanings and,
yeah.
whatever, but just put it on it and it's actually like it's laugh out loud. Like I was watching it today and I had it on my laptop and my headphones in and I was like pissing myself laughing. And my husband and my kid were like, "What are you watching?" And I was like, I couldn't even talk. It was so funny. But it is that great film to just pop on if you need to have a laugh. Like it's a great film.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's and unfortunately, because the disc hasn't been available for so long, I think there's a
Mm,
whole bunch of people who've never seen it.
yeah.
And so it's unfortunate, because it really does it's such a good movie that I think a lot more people should be watching it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, do you have anything else you wanted to say about Dogma specifically?
I don't think so. I think I've pretty much expressed my whole love for Dogma. So yeah, I'm good. I'm ready to move on to the not so fun film
Oh yes,
about religion.
this one, yeah. So we'll move on to Red State. This one was interesting too, because I did like this one because he toured this one. This was another one that I don't even think the Weinsteins wanted to touch. This
Mm,
one, he ended up distributing it himself.
yes.
And then he took it on a road show, which is what he's kind of
Mm,
done with his movies ever since. He's gone on a really, like, since Red State, he's gone on a very much a much higher independent style
mm,
of distribution, which he's doing right now with Clerks 3 as well. He's doing the road
yeah.
show, and which I think is great in a way, but it also, because it doesn't go wide, I tend to miss them.
Yeah.
And so I did miss this one. I didn't see it in a roadshow. It wasn't until I got to see it on video. And the
Yeah.
first time I watched it, because I was such a fan of all his View Askew universe stuff, that
Mm,
this one really left me kind of cold, and I wasn't
nice.
as big a fan of the first time I watched it. This Watching it the other day, it was only my second time watching it. I enjoyed it a whole hell of a lot more than I did originally, and I find
Yeah.
it to be a fantastic movie. Um,
I think
you
if
have
you
to,
go into it, sorry,
yeah,
I think if you go into it thinking, right, this is a Kevin Smith film, then
yeah,
you're going to be severely disappointed because
right,
it is not a Kevin Smith film that you previously kind of expect. I remember when I can't remember whether it had gone into production or whatever, but there was so much talk about it because they were like, "Oh my god, Kevin Smith is doing a horror film," and everyone was excited about it because obviously they were so used to his kind of comedy.
right.
And so I do remember the talk surrounding this, and I do remember being very excited to see it. And once it came out on video or
Right.
DVD, I loved it straight away.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I wish I had enjoyed it the first time. But yeah, I just, because I had that history with his movies, and kind of the preconceived notion of what his movies were,
Mhm.
that it was such a weird departure that it it just didn't connect. And but now, having some distance from it, and um and myself delving deeper into horror the last few
Yeah.
years, that gave me a new appreciation for it. And it is a fantastic movie. It's
Mm.
well shot. The storyline is really well done. The acting is just great. Uh,
Mm,
Michael Parks, of course, is fantastic. It's just it's it's a whole nother level for him.
mm,
It elevated him. Um, and I definitely think it doesn't get the appreciation that it deserved
yeah,
at the time for sure. And like, because again, I didn't give it the appreciation either. And
yeah,
I think it's going to be one of those ones again, if it will ever be released again, that it will eventually get the kind of recognition it deserves.
yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I think a lot of people went into it thinking, Jay was going to pop out somewhere and be like,
Yeah.
"What's up, my dudes?" But you could definitely see him getting
Snoochie
himself into this.
boochies.
Yeah, you could definitely see him getting into this like sort of trouble.
Yeah.
Rob trying to get him out of it. But you know what? That's what Kevin Smith should do next. He should do like an amalgamation of Red State and Jay
Right.
and Silent Bob. That'd be amazing. But yeah, I always find comedic actors and directors, they do really well going into horror
Oh yeah.
because they're two genres that you have to work hard to elicit a physical response, whether that's
Right.
laughter or fear. And so I find like, when Robin Williams went and did like 24-hour photo,
Mhm.
he was fantastic in it. He was the creepiest fucker I've ever
Oh yeah.
seen. And so I think Kevin Smith was really good going into this sort of genre because he knows how to elicit fear. And he's obviously a fan of the horror genre. And he knew how to kind of play on society's fears of cults and extremist religion. And he's obviously got a thing about religion if he's
Yeah.
exploring it
Yeah.
in a different vein. So we've got, the three high school lads that are they think they're hooking up with someone. And it kind of starts off as like a silly American Pie movie almost.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they wake up and they find themselves the prisoners of this, Fred Phelps style cult. Um,
Yeah.
and the thing I love about Red State is it takes all these twists and turns that you
Oh yeah.
think you're on some sort of path, you think you're following a character, and all of a sudden it takes you in completely different direction, and you're kind of you never know what's going to come next.
Yeah. It does that a
Um,
couple of times. Yeah.
it really does, and there's some really horrible parts, like with the crucifixion.
Mhm.
Um, and then one of the boys breaks free. You think he's going to be the main character, and all of a sudden, like,
Oh
spoiler
yeah.
alert, but he gets
Yeah.
killed really horribly, and
Yeah.
it's a wild ride.
It
And
really is. Yeah.
you know, all through it, you've got John Goodman as kind of the anchor character, and he's fantastic in it. Like, I think John
Oh
Goodman is amazing
yeah.
as the
Yeah. It's one of his best
FBI agent.
performances for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's just such a horror, it's rooted in reality. As I said, like we've got this Fred Phelps character played by Michael Parks, who is terrifying. Um, and it's because it's rooted in reality that there are men out there who are leading these cults and exploiting women, children, and people in vulnerable situations to be in these cults. And it's just terrifying. I find it really scary.
Oh yeah. No, it's definitely because of the rooting it in reality like that, because of these cults and everything, it definitely lends itself to a much scarier um reality than a lot of horror movies. Because a lot
Mm,
of horror movies, slashers and whatever else, a lot of that's just gonna be fake.
yeah.
It's or you have to put a lot of belief into that. And so whereas with this, I mean, you can fully believe that this kind of situation is really going to happen, and
Yeah.
it elevates that in such a way. And like you said, because it keeps taking these twists and turns, it keeps changing the characters. And John Goodman, as great as he is, he doesn't come in until like halfway through the movie as
Yeah.
well, too. So and then it shifts that perspective, and then it's
Mm,
from his you know not really necessarily all his point of view, but largely his point of view from that point on. And we're
yeah.
following his character. And it's interesting to shift that perspective and to uh see how it plays out. And even when it plays out at the end, you're thrown for a loop again, because you're expecting
Yeah.
this one thing of happening, and then he twists it again, and you're like, wait, what? Like,
Yeah.
because they think that the trumpets are calling, spoiler alert for
I know.
anybody.
Yeah.
But they think the trumpets are calling, and they basically give up, and then we find out, oh no, it was a bunch of college kids playing a prank.
Yeah.
And thankfully that helped the ATF
Yeah.
people get them.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic that the way the whole thing is played out. It's so
Yeah.
tense. It's all within like a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's just the it's the tension for it all is fantastic. And that's what's
Mm.
great about it, is there is a sense of tension throughout the whole movie, that once the kids are captured, from that point on, you are just constantly on edge of your seat,
Mm.
waiting to see what the hell's going to happen. And and then it just all hell breaks loose.
Yeah. And I like the way that he's taken a very firm stance in his portrayal of these kind of extremist religions. And especially with the ending, he's almost saying, like, look how fucking ridiculous you are. Like, look what yous are doing. Like, you're you're killing people, and you're hurting women and children, and you think bleeding trumpets are gonna ascend you. It's like
Right.
he's really saying, like, look how moronic you guys are. There was question about the original ending. Apparently he had a different ending, and it was going to be that the rapture
Yes.
actually happened, and the four
Yeah, and there
horsemen
was
would,
a huge
yes,
angel come down and everything. Yeah.
exactly. I'm really glad he didn't go with that.
Same. Yeah,
Yeah.
it would have been an interesting take, but
Yeah.
I don't think that it would have worked as well. And I think
Yeah.
the way that he ended it was much better. And
Yes.
I think he did that for the fact that he did not have a special effects budget, and he had to do it on the cheap. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, that's fine, because it works really
Yeah.
well for you.
Yeah. It would have
But yeah,
muddled. It would have muddied the message.
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that having the more fantastical ending where an angel comes down and, yes, obliterates the church and the people within. Great. I get that that's your message, that yes, in the end, heaven doesn't want you either. But but I think you get that well enough through the more rounded ending.
Now, unless he decided to bring back Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. I would have liked that
been
ending.
Great. Yeah. Bring them back just for the bring them back just to
Exactly.
raise the down. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would, okay, I'll give you that. That would have been a perfect ending.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, that would have been great. But yeah, I think that it's Michael Parks does a really good job as the preacher.
Yeah.
He is sinister and just truly horrifying in this. And it's so funny too, because I know him predominantly from Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez movies, and where he plays sheriff, or he plays Earl McGraw. I think he's either a sheriff or a U.S. Marshal. I can't remember offhand. But his son also plays in those movies as well, and his son is in this movie. Also, he's Mordecai, and so it's funny to see both of them in this. And apparently, the reason why they were in this is because that Kevin Smith liked Michael Parks' performance in From Dusk Till Dawn. So because he liked that so much, he was like, okay, I'm going to pull him in for this. So, but yeah, it's fantastic. And apparently, he was a country and gospel singer back during the early Johnny Cash days. And so when he's singing in the movie, he's kind of singing some of those songs. And apparently he recorded them on CD later as well after the movie was done. So yeah. So if you like that kind of stuff, go search it out. But yeah, it's fantastic, because you see within the his congregation and stuff like that, you see some of his regulars and some of his friends. Obviously his wife is in there, Jennifer Schwalbach. She plays the wife of Mordecai. And then Betty Adderlin, who was previously in Dogma, she played the nun in the beginning that gets
Yeah.
convinced by Matt Damon to renounce her faith.
Yeah.
She's also in this. There's just a smattering of his people, but he's not, but it's not the usual View Askew people. There's no Jason Mewes, there's no Brian Halloran, no Matt Damon or Ben Affleck, sadly. But it's great to see him continue to pull from that cast of people that he's comfortable with and can make these movies with, but still pull in new people like John Goodman and Melissa Leo's in this and does a really good performance as well. He's a great director with actors, and I think that's he gets so little recognition for the work he really has done in creating these movies that really will, despite a few things here or there, will stand the test of time eventually, be showing just how good of a writer and a director he truly was. And is, he's still making movies. And I love that he's going back to the View Askew universe. I love that we're getting a Clerks 3. I love that we got Jay and Silent Bob reboot. But I would like to see him continue to do these little side movies that aren't connected to that as well. See him stretch when he can get the damn budget for it. I think that's unfortunate that he doesn't get it typically.
Yeah. I mean, usually I have a problem with directors constantly using the same actors. Tim Burton and Rob Zombie. But I feel like with Kevin Smith, he really knows how to utilize his actors. Like, it's not like he's putting his mates in the film and being like, hey, you're going to be in my film. He's like, you know what? I work with these people and they're so fucking good that I want to work with them again. But I also know when to get other people in my film. I'm not going to keep recycling just for the fact of it. And, obviously these people really enjoy working with him, and you can see that in stuff like Dogma. As we said, Matt Damon seems to be having a ball of time, and it's probably down to the work set that Kevin Smith has put out. And that's another thing I really admire about him as well.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, it's you see it, obviously Quentin Tarantino reuses a lot of his favorite actors. I mean, Sam Jackson's in a lot of his stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'll take Sam Jackson in pretty much anything. And then Adam Sandler's movies always have the same group of people in them. But again, those movies kind of lend itself to it as well. It's I think the comedy kind of stuff helps. It's different when it's dramatic. I think if you keep trying to use the same people over and over and over again, it's like when Martin Scorsese uses Robert De Niro for a lot of movies, and then uses what's his name, Leonardo DiCaprio for a lot of his movies. It's just like, okay, pick some different people. I like those actors, don't get me wrong, but like, choose somebody else after a while. And that's what I think is great about Kevin Smith's movies too, is that sure, he uses Matt Damon and Ben Affleck or whatever. Ben Affleck's been in several of them, but Ben Affleck was only the star in one movie. And it's each movie has different stars, and well, I guess two, because he was in Jersey Girl as well. But I enjoy the fact that he reuses, like you said, reuses the actors, puts them in different roles, gives them different things to do, and it's not the same thing each time. And you get that a little bit more, like, he puts his wife in a lot of his movies, but she's largely a background character or a very minor character. She's not the main character. Rob Zombie.
Exactly.
And that's not to say that she's not a good actress, Sherry Moon Zombie. I just don't know that she's a good enough actress.
Especially if you're playing like the same character over and over and over, and it's just like, find someone else to work with, like who you can put into a main character role. I don't know. I hate shitting on Sherry Moon because I do quite like her. I'm not a big fan. Like, I don't love Rob Zombie, but I
That's
quite
yeah,
like
that's my
Sherry
ultimate
Moon.
thing is
But
that like I'm not a huge fan of his movies in general. They're okay. They're just not
yeah,
great to me.
yeah,
So,
I liked them when I was a teen, like a teenager, and
oh
kind of
yeah,
like thinking that House of a Thousand Corpses was like the most extreme thing ever. Um, but yeah. You know what?
I agree.
If they enjoy working together, grand. But it
Yeah,
gets boring after a while.
yeah. Oh, and yeah, for sure. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what I appreciate with Kevin Smith
Mm,
is that he's not putting his wife
yeah.
up to the front each time. I think her biggest role was in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, where she was one of the the cat burglars.
Yeah.
But even then, she was like the minorest of the cat burglars, and
Yeah.
so it's each time he puts her in something, it just seems to be kind of a very side character, and that's what's great. He knows the limitations of doing that, and tries to highlight the other actors more,
Yeah.
people who are actors.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's but this one, this one's that's what's interesting about this movie too is that it's really you think that it's about the three boys in the beginning, and it shifts, and it's their story gets cut off pretty early. One of them gets to the end, but it's or almost to the end. And they but it shifts pretty quickly to Michael Parks's character and to John Goodman, and then it's a movie about them.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to see that shift, and to and then with Michael Parks and John Goodman, it's great because they are definitely very good actors, and
Mm,
and playing off of each other, but also barely in anything. The only time they're in a scene together is at the very end.
yeah.
So it's faction against faction up until that point, and so
Yeah.
it's very cool to see them dealing with what they're having to deal with through the whole thing, and that firefight at the end is very tense and
Mm,
just very very bloody.
yeah.
um
Yeah.
but it's great as a horror film. I think it's great.
Hmm.
I think that he accomplishes um creating a horror film that will stand as a great horror film if more people can see it.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah, along with Dogma, I think that both of these need to get reissued, and you need to come to streaming of some sort. At least VOD, that people can own it in some way, shape,
Yeah.
or form, so that
Yeah.
it can be seen by a wider audience. Because
Yeah.
these both of these movies are fantastic. They both speak about religion in different ways. And, one's about having faith, and the other one's about the uh toxicity of faith in a way.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and even Dogma's about the toxicity of faith as well. And so both of these take the same coin and just kind of flip it and say
Yeah.
one can kind of be good, and then if you take it too far in this other way, this is what can happen. And
Yeah.
I think that it made for a great double feature in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I really enjoyed them as a double feature because, I'm quite anti-religion. So I was like, this is great. So yeah, I think if anyone is of the same mentality as me, I think they're a great double bill. Like, I don't know whether perhaps you
Absolutely.
should start with Red State and then watch Dogma, just so your whole night isn't completely ruined.
Yeah, I guess I could see flipping it.
Yeah.
um I yeah, however you want to do it. Yeah, I think they work.
Yeah.
I think they work both hand in hand. I think you can watch them both yeah, equally, in either direction, however you feel
Mm,
comfortable doing it. But yeah, if you'd like to have a little decompression, watch Dogma afterward,
yeah.
for sure. But yeah, I remember when I put it out there to for people to come on and choose episodes, you jumped at this one real quick. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, so good. I was like, but make sure you have copies.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was, because you know what, like, I mean, it's very hard for me to think of like someone who isn't an out and out horror director that I am a massive fan of, because I'm one of those awful people that, like, you know, beginning of this year, I did a roundup of like my top 10 films of the year, and they were all horror. And I was just like, my God, I'm so boring. But when you put it out and you were like, oh, Kevin Smith, I was like, actually, I really enjoy Kevin Smith films, and I would actually really like to talk about him. So that's why I jumped. And
Good.
anything to talk about anti-religion, I'm there.
Well, it worked out. You got to talk some Kevin
Yes,
Smith, and you got to talk some anti-religion, and you got to talk some horror. So it all
exactly.
kind of worked
Yes,
together.
it did. It all came at Millhouse.
How would you rate these movies? Give me like, out of 5 stars. How would you rate each of these movies?
I would give
And there's no wrong
Dogma.
answers.
I'd give Dogma probably about a 4 3/4 stars.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Out of 5. I'd give Red State about 4 out of 5. If there was anything with Red State, I would have liked a bit more of the psychology behind cults, but that's just because I'm a massive
Yeah.
cult nerd. Like I
Yeah.
freaking love all that stuff. So, but yeah, for me they're pretty near perfect films. Like I love
Wow.
them. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I definitely would give Red State a 4-star for sure.
Yeah.
I did give Dogma less. I gave it about a 3.5 star. That doesn't mean it's a bad
Okay.
movie. On my rating scale, 3 is an average movie that I enjoy.
Yeah.
I would probably give it, it's edging towards 4 for me. So maybe a 3 3/4.
Yeah.
But because I do believe it's a really good movie, and it's really
Yeah.
fun, and
Yeah.
it has a lot to say that we don't
Yeah.
really talk about too much.
Yeah.
So,
You know what it is? Like I'm so hard to make laugh, like when it comes to comedy. Like
yeah.
I'm not really a fan of comedy films. And it's so difficult to make me laugh in a comedy that if that film makes me laugh out loud, then I'm gonna give it a high score. Like
All right.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it made your partner and your kid wonder what you were laughing at. So
Yeah,
I mean,
like
it worked really well then.
exactly, yeah. But like, what is that sound coming out of your mouth? Oh, it's a laugh.
All right. Well, I don't think I have anything else to say about it. Do you have anything else you want to
No,
mention about Red State?
no,
All
other
right.
than go watch it.
Oh,
If
absolutely.
you
Yeah.
can
Find
find
a
it.
copy. Yeah. If you can find a copy affordably enough. I think like I said, I paid $80 for my copy of Dogma. I think I paid $40 for my copy of Red State. Both of them I got through eBay.
Oh Lord.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
I just watched them on you can rent them from YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where I
Okay.
watched them.
Oh, I'm not sure if that's available as much in the States.
Oh,
Through
okay.
that, yeah, because rights distributions and stuff like that are different. So I'm not
Okay.
positive if you can get them here anywhere through
Okay.
streaming. So, but yeah, if you can find it anywhere, definitely find it.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
do what you can.
Yeah.
Definitely check out that In Defense of Dogma
Yeah.
documentary too. That one is definitely on YouTube. But
Okay.
well, thanks for joining me. I appreciate you coming on. Now is the part of the show where you can hype your podcast and let people know where you're at on the interwebs.
Yeah, so you can find the What a Scream podcast on Spotify and Apple, Google Podcasts, anywhere you really listen to podcasts. I am also on Twitter. That's where I'm most active, at what_scream, and that's where you can kind of keep up with my writing as well. So,
All right. Well, thank you for coming on. I'll have to hit you up for another episode in the future.
definitely, thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks again to Ygraine for joining me. Next episode, Kevin Urich joins to talk Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back and Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. Thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or at creepyandgeeky.com. You can follow the podcast on social media at Creepy and Geeky on both Twitter and Instagram. If you'd like to follow me, I'm Geek Thulu on Twitter and geek.thulu on Instagram. You can support the podcast by ordering teas and more from our TeePublic page. All of the links are in the show notes. Finally, don't forget, stay creepy.